This episode is sponsored in part by our friends at Vultr, spelled V-U-L-T-R, because they're all about helping save money, including on things like, vowels. So what they do is they are a cloud provider that provides surprisingly high performance cloud compute at a price that, well, sure, they claim it is better than AWS's pricing, and when they say that, they mean that it's less money. Sure, I don't dispute that. But what I find interesting is that it's predictable. They tell you in advance on a monthly basis what it's going to cost. They have a bunch of advanced networking features. They have 19 global locations and scale things elastically, not to be confused with openly, which is apparently elastic and open. They can mean the same thing sometimes. They have had over 1 million users. Deployments take less than 60 seconds across 12 pre-selected operating systems, or if you're one of those nutters like me, you can bring your own ISO and install basically any operating system you want. Starting with pricing as low as $2.50 a month for Vultr Cloud Compute, they have plans for developers and businesses of all sizes except maybe Amazon, who stubbornly insists on having something of the scale all on their own. Try Vultr today for free by visiting vultr.com/screaming and you'll receive $100 in credit. That's vultr.com/screaming.
Good morning, AWS, and welcome to the AWS Morning Brief. I'm cloud economist Corey Quinn, and my month is rubbish because reInvent is nigh. Requinvent.com. That's REQUINNVent.com. If you want to follow along without having to deal with going to Las Vegas yourself or sitting through entirely too much content. Now let's see what happened last week in the world of AWS. Amazon EC2 now supports sharing Amazon machine images across AWS organizations and organizational units. Every once in a while, something like this comes along, and I have to check that the system I use to gather all of these bits and pieces of releases hasn't been stuck on an item since 2015 or so. Nope, this is only now becoming available, long after the feature has been worked around in every environment that really needs it. Amazon Lightsail now supports AWS CloudFormation for instances, disks, and databases. It's starting to get hard to distinguish between Lightsail and AWS proper. Amazon Corretto 17 support roadmap announced. This is a welcome change. Java's support roadmap more closely resembles the note kidnappers leave demanding a ransom. Amazon EC2 now supports access to Red Hat Knowledge Base. The idea of charging extra for access to documentation is on the one hand absurd, but on the other, maybe if you charge for it, customers will actually read it for once. Amazon MemoryDB for Redis now supports AWS CloudFormation. Yeah, keep telling me how this service was ready for prime time when it launched to general availability a couple of months ago. I could use a good laugh. Amazon RDS now supports cross-account KMS keys for exporting RDS snapshots. Well, this would have been awesome in 2015. I had to build something awful back then to achieve a worse version of this. Amazon's simple email service now offers a new console experience. Is it a white-labeled SendGrid account? Amazon Time Sync service now makes it easier to generate and compare timestamps. Oh, okay, they can call a service SageMaker, but the one time I typo this service and spell it Amazon Time Sync like Time the Spice, everyone starts calling for my head. AWS Backup Vault Lock is now available in the China Beijing region and China Ningxia region. Even before this was supported, you could have gotten your old backups from the Chinese government. If you didn't like this joke, replace it with GovCloud and the NSA. If you still don't like this joke, they can't all be bangers. Please, whatever you do, don't email me. AWS Data Sync can now copy data between Hadoop distributed file systems, HDFS, and AWS storage services. I keep forgetting Data Sync exists. It's like rclone as a service, which is rsync for cloud, which is CP for a network, which is, okay, I'm old. AWS Secrets Manager increases secrets limit to 500,000 per account. I'd like to just point out for a second that at 40 cents per secret per month, this means that if you can trick someone into running a malicious provisioning script, free tier accounts can happily hum along while incurring $200,000 a month in charges per region. Simplify CI/CD configuration for AWS serverless applications and your favorite CI/CD system, general availability. This is the general availability of SAM pipelines. The title of the post is unclear. The bigger problem with the headline is the entire conceit that any of us have a favorite CI/CD system instead of one we simply despise the least. MariaDB collaborates with AWS to deliver SkySQL on AWS. I have no earthly idea how this differs from RDS MariaDB, and at this point I'm too afraid to ask. Introducing the SAP Lens for the AWS well-architected framework. For the SAP Lens, the cost optimization pillar is just the sound of an SAP salesperson laughing so hard that they wet themselves.
This episode is sponsored in part by our friends at Chaos Search. You could run Elasticsearch or Elastic Cloud or OpenSearch, as they're calling it now, or a self-hosted Elk stack. But why? Chaos Search gives you the same API you've come to know and tolerate, along with unlimited data retention and no data movement. Just throw your data into S3 and proceed from there as you would expect. This is great for IT operations folks, for app performance monitoring, cybersecurity. If you're using Elasticsearch, consider not running Elasticsearch. They're also available now in the AWS Marketplace if you'd prefer not to go direct and have half of whatever you pay them count toward your EDP commitment. Discover what companies like Klarna, Equifax, Armor Security, and Blackboard already have. To learn more, visit chaossearch.io and tell them I sent you just so you can see them facepalm yet again.
Blur your background and suppress noise in an online meeting application built with the Amazon Chime SDK for JavaScript. That's nothing. I was able to completely obscure my background as well as suppress all noise last week because a meeting was set to use Microsoft Teams and it didn't freaking work. Bottle Rocket, a year in the life. In the past year, since Bottle Rocket was announced, 2 AWS-adjacent scandals have happened. The first was the workers peeing in bottle nonsense, while the second was Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin launching a rocket that bore a striking resemblance to, well, a schlong. As a result, through absolutely no fault of their own, Bottle Rocket wins the 2021 award for Most Unfortunate Name. Build a shelf monitoring application using AWS Panorama. There's watching paint dry, boring. And then there's, now that the paint is dry, watch the shelf sit there, boring. Computers are better at doing boring tasks like watching shelves or talking about VMware Tanzu. Host RStudio Connect and Package Manager for ML development in RStudio on Amazon SageMaker. SageMaker continues to absorb other functionality left and right. We're not too far from the day where we can call it its own ecosystem with a fair bit of legitimacy. Your guide to media and entertainment at reInvent 2021. Yeah, ignore everything they say about this. The proper guide you need to media and entertainment at reInvent 2021 is listening to this podcast, reading my newsletter, and flagging the things that are of interest. I'll be doing a lot for reQuinvent this year, and it's only a few weeks away. Please kill me. Amazon CloudFront introduces response headers policies. Finally, I have been asking for this for years, and I owe an edible arrangement to whoever drove this through on the CloudFront service team. Please let me know where to send that. No, I'm not kidding. You no longer need to write custom code that dynamically invokes upon every request just to set a static header. AWS Global Security and Compliance Acceleration Initiative now supporting UK customers. That's right, a global dingus is now supporting an additional country because somebody at AWS named something without consulting a dictionary first. And finally, fighting fraud and improper payments in real time at the scale of federal expenditures. If this solution doesn't tie together AWS services to form a congressional ethics oversight body, I'm unconvinced it solves the root of the problem. And that's what happened last week in AWS. I'm cloud economist Corey Quinn. More to come later this week.
This has been a Humble Pod production. Stay humble.